Where do I go?
Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Inshallah, always as usual when we get started. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, brothers and sisters. As usual, we're just getting our tech stuff going in. So Lisa, I'm just waiting for you to get into Instagram. While we're waiting for everybody to join, just tell us where you're all from. What part of the world are you in?
Sorry.
So Lisa, request please, request for me. So while Lisa's figuring out how to get into Instagram, and make sure everything's going well here. So inshallah, today we're going to be tackling the topic of domestic violence, abuse, and survival. In the last few weeks, alhamdulillah, during this quarantine, we've had the opportunity to okay, so Lisa's trying to get in. FYI, just like yesterday, I'm womaning the station here, so to speak, with all the tech stuff going on at once. So just make sure, inshallah, everything's going well. Just to get a confirmation, can people hear us? Everybody can hear us? For those who are watching on Facebook, Instagram, as well as YouTube, you just give us a heads up that you can hear us. So Lisa, there we go. So Lisa is joining us now, inshallah. Okay, so I'm gonna have to something. You are. So I'm just gonna have to turn off this live and do it again on Instagram. So just wait a second. Sorry.
Okay.
All right. So for those of us in the other places, thanks for joining us. Just have to check something quickly here. So like I was saying, the last few weeks we've had different topics that we were discussing during the pandemic, whether we're talking to scholars, whether we're talking with other mental health professionals, different topics in regards to what is happening in the world, how we're dealing and coping with the different challenges that we're experiencing these days. And alhamdulillah, we've gotten the opportunity to explore different topics. We looked at lockdown with the kids. Assalamu alaikum on Instagram again. So Lisa, do you want to try and connect with me again in Instagram? And so the other day we took a look at the topic, how to maintain positivity. We also looked at how to handle and deal with anxiety as well as depression. We also looked at how to deal with family relationships and how to manage that at home. And assalamu alaikum, there we are.
Okay.
I can hear you in my earphones now. I couldn't hear you before, that's why. So alhamdulillah.
I told you I'm not good with technology.
No, mashallah, you're doing great. I was the one that had the tech issue this time. I used the wrong device, but we're good now. So you can hear me clearly, Lisa, in your earphones?
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm
alhamdulillah.
gonna be like a little weird with my phone because it's gonna be, because I know we're
trying out different technologies by using laptops as well as our phone devices, and alhamdulillah, so far so good. So just a quick introduction of myself. My name is Berak Hussain. I am a psychotherapist here in Ottawa, Canada. And so I do clinical treatment of clients at a university where I work at. And I do a lot of mental health advocacy within the community, which has taken me all over the world, alhamdulillah, and to different centers and communities to talk about mental health and how to destigmatize it and normalize it. And in one of these trips, I got a chance to meet Lisa, who I was following and admiring her work. And so Lisa Vogl is a revert herself, mashallah. and she is also the co-founder of the Verona Modest clothing line that you find at Macy's. And that is such an amazing, huge accomplishment that is so proud as a fellow hijabi Muslim and an advocate for modest clothing. It's so amazing to see a fellow sister working hard and advocating and succeeding as an entrepreneur in her business. And so it was quite a journey for you to get to where you are today. And part of that journey also included Lisa being in a domestic violence abuse situation where she has now become an advocate for speaking out against violence and domestic abuse and intimate partner abuse as well. So inshallah, for today, what we're going to be doing is that once we've promoted this talk, we've had quite a few people from all over the place send us questions. And so what we're going to do, inshallah, is go through these questions. But also, before we do that, we wanted to take a closer look at understanding what is abuse, what is domestic violence, and what are some of the common terms around what abuse is. And this is something that I see quite a bit in my line of work as a therapist, whether it's females who are getting abuse from their partners or including males who are getting abuse from their partners, because it does go both ways. What we mostly hear, however, is from the statistics with women. And the reason being, and one of the reasons is that that is probably reported more often. And the statistics show that, or there's more calls than that. And this has to go also along the lines of what we know in terms of how women and men communicate, and how women are the ones who are most likely to talk about their problems, where the men are the ones who are most likely to keep it in. They don't talk about their problems to, yes, somebody mentioned here, men don't speak up. So can you imagine if they're the ones who are being abused, the shame that's involved with them speaking up? Right? So that's part of it that we see, but we do see, and I have been in many cases where there has been abuse against men. And so this doesn't necessarily mean, so when you hear abuse, it doesn't necessarily mean physical. Yeah. So Lisa, tell us your thoughts and your understanding of what does abuse mean, and then we can get into the denominations of it.
It's not a very complicated question. It's not an elaborate answer. There's two things to abuse, and it's power and control, nothing else. It is just abuse is just done in different ways. It can be done through financially, sexual abuse, physical abuse, verbal, emotional. And yes, women are abusive also. It's just that the shame with men, it comes that they're not manly if they talk about it. So they are afraid to speak up. So
yes,
but women are definitely can be just as abusive as men. And we don't talk about emotional abuse and the effects of it. I was both physically, verbally, and emotionally abused. And I get questions all the time about abuse. And they're like, well, I wasn't physically abused. And I'm somebody who has been strangled. I've been thrown against the wall. I've been kicked. And I'm the first person to tell you that emotional abuse is worse. And we don't talk about it enough. So
bless you for sharing this. Bless you for sharing. This is definitely, we should have said right at the beginning, we will be speaking about sensitive issues and topics here that could potentially trigger you. If that is the case, I ask you to reach out to your local crisis centers or counselors or online counselors if you find yourself triggered with something. So we just want to give you that heads up that we are talking about a very sensitive, delicate topic, and to be aware of that. And you can reach out to both myself as a therapist at the end, so I can refer you to the appropriate resources. And as Lisa said, she herself is not a therapist, but definitely somebody who's, having gone through it, knows where to refer you potentially or give you some advice. So just a heads up. Yeah. Thank you, Lisa. Go ahead.
No, it's just something that
we were discussing abuse. Yeah.
We definitely don't talk about it as far as emotional abuse, but I wouldn't necessarily say that women speak up as much as well, though, because I actually would respectfully almost disagree with that. I think when women are in abusive relationships, especially within our community, you know, when I spoke out, it wasn't for a sense of like, let me share my story. It was a case of, we don't talk about it in our community, and there's a shame that's put on the victims. And what happens is that women, yes, and like you highlighted, men too, they end up staying in these abusive relationships because we are afraid to talk about it. So,
Yes.
and then on top of that, they go to like these religious leaders for help and advice on how to get out or how to like approach it. And unfortunately, they're told sober. They're told to stay in, be
And be
patient,
patient. Yeah.
pray. Whereas that doesn't necessarily happen in other communities. So I like to make sure that we're not stressing that it happens more within the Muslim community.
No, and that's not the case. That's not what we're saying. We're saying it is happening. It
Exactly.
is happening, but we're not talking about it as much. There's so much more shame around that, just like
Exactly.
mental health. Yes.
The problem is the way we address it, and there's a lot of victim shaming that goes on, and women are guilted into staying in the marriages even when their physical safety and their children's safety are at risk.
So why do you believe the woman is told that you need to stay here, be patient?
And I want to be clear, like I want to make sure I'm not pointing out that it's like all sheikhs and all imams. What I
No.
found is that, and I hate to say things so black and white, but in this case I really mean it. They're either the right mentality or they're not. You know what I mean?
Yes.
When it comes to this type of an issue, that's my personal opinion. They either understand that if a woman or a man is in an abusive situation, they tell them to find resources to get out. Versus there's sheikhs that tell them to stay patient and read Quran, and they tell them that like it's the worst sin that you know what I mean. But divorce
To get a divorce.
it's there for a
Yes.
reason. It's there to be able to protect yourself. I'm certainly not advocating to break up families. No, that's not what I'm advocating for. But I am advocating for if you are in an abusive home, it's more important that the children and the woman find safety.
And let's talk about that a little bit. Children who are, because we've had some questions related to that. When children are in that environment of abuse and they're seeing the abuse between the parents, there's a domino effect of how this impacts them growing up. First of all, it impacts their development, their brain development, their emotional development, their social development, and also the risk of potentially repeating this pattern as well. It really impacts them in the way they interact with the opposite gender as well. So a girl who sees her mother abuse her father, or a boy who sees his father abuse his mother, right? That can really impact them in the sense that they see this as the appropriate behavior of how you treat your partner. This could be a behavior that could be repeated later on in life with their relationships. So there's so much, and there's
chances are very high of them actually repeating it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It just could be. It's a very likely, cycle. I always say that, when I actually left and I was still not I was not in a mental, healthy state of mind, I felt this guilt that I was breaking up a family. And
yes,
God bless this brother who actually helped me get out. Him and his wife kind of helped me. And he said, "You didn't break up the family. His fist broke up."
I can't hear you. Keep going. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, keep going. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
It's breaking up for me too a little bit, and I'm like piecing together.
That's okay. It's the internet.
She said this.
It's okay, Habib. It's the internet. Keep going. Yeah.
Yeah, so we have this mentality that we're breaking up families, but I actually say you're not breaking up a family, you're breaking a cycle.
Oh, that's wonderful to say that. Yeah.
And I'm not, and I do advocate for, the best solution to, like, for me personally, I left, and when I finally left, I said, you have 1 year to get help. But I left where the kids and I were safe.
Okay.
I actually took the kids and I fled to another state from Texas to Florida. And he knew at that moment I was not coming back, because it's a very common trait to leave and come back, because I did that several times. But this time he knew I wasn't coming back. I had actually taken the kids away to work, and I drove from Texas to Florida. And I said, my condition is that you have to get help, and we will stay here while we're safe. And he did get help. He did get anger management, but it wasn't enough.
And it wasn't enough.
Go ahead.
No, I was saying, but it was not enough. And you see that. Yeah.
Yeah. It could, because the emotional abuse was still there. He wasn't there to hurt me physically because I was in Florida and he was in Dallas. But he did get help, but he had too much trauma as a child because
The cycle, the cycle. So he's going through his own cycle there. Yeah.
Exactly. So just like you said, it's a repeating a pattern. So he
Mm-hmm.
witnessed abuse and also experienced abuse from his father, and he was repeating a behavior.
SubhanAllah, and how the impact of that, because he didn't get a chance perhaps or an opportunity to get the therapy to relearn appropriate behavior. And that's all. And you hear that sometimes, especially from different ethnic and cultural families, or families that come from a parenting style that included, let's say, hitting or spanking. They see it as cultural parenting, where when in fact it crosses the lines into abuse, and they see that as the norm. They see that as that's the way you raise your child, and you see them repeating this cycle, saying that's how I was raised and that's all I know. And so alhamdulillah, there are parenting classes, there are courses everywhere that you can find and learn to relearn appropriate parenting, but also how to treat your partner. And we see now a little bit more often now than we did before, classes that couples must take before they get married, and sheikhs and centers are now offering this
to be mandatory.
I agree with you. Just like the Catholic Church, yeah.
Law that tells you that you have to do this. It's so necessary, because we don't talk about preventive, like, you know what I mean? Just kind of like preventive medicine or something like that. We don't talk about these, like, you know, ways to avoid getting into these abusive relationships. So that right there can like cut out so many, you know, so much trauma and so many people having been abused because we don't know how to look for the red flags, you know? And
exactly.
That's something we need to address.
And so let's jump right into the questions that we have, because one of the questions actually asks this: what are red flags to look for when choosing a partner to prevent marrying an abuser? That's a loaded question, but let's take a try at it. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, one, like from my personal experience, you know, when I got married, I jumped right into it. Okay. And I thought I was doing everything by the Islamic way. We didn't even touch each other's hands before marriage. You know what I mean? And I looked for all the right things. He prayed. He did all his sunnahs. He was giving dawah on the street. He was the first man in the line at the masjid praying. And he did khutbahs in the masjid.
MashaAllah.
Yeah, mashallah, right? I was looking for the right things. So I'm thinking, let's keep it halal, and we know we're marrying for the sake of Allah, so we rushed into it. Okay. I know that's not a red flag, but that's one thing that you should do.
So not rush into it, not rush in. Yeah.
Because what we fail to do is that we fail to look for character. You know, we're taught to just look at the deen, right? But we're not taught to look at the character, you know? And these are principles that have nothing to do with Islam too. This is something that you don't have to be Muslim to, you know, have to look for, right? So you want to see, so character is the biggest thing. How do they treat other people?
Ahsanti. Yeah.
So this is important. Like, they're treating you like gold because you're the prize. So they're trying to win you over, right? But how is their character with everybody else, with someone that they don't need to get anything from? That's another thing. I also wanted to look for, are they quick to get angry? You know, how do they handle problems? So you're going to have disagreements. You're going to have controversies. You're going to have arguments before you get married and in marriage. But how do you handle it? You know, you don't have to agree with the person, but can you disagree respectfully? You know what I mean? Do they start name calling? You start putting them down.
Right.
It seems so minimal, but it is the start of a spiral effect of what gets so much bigger, you know?
Right.
So those are the biggest things that I can come up with off the top of my head. And also, are they, you know, I personally think a little bit of jealousy is normal, right? We're all human, but how much of it is healthy? You know what I mean?
On both sides, yeah.
Like, you can't tell me that we all don't get jealous, right? But at what point is it unhealthy? And where
somebody along with our conversation is saying, how do you know his treatment to others is not just the show for you? Because you can't tell in the beginning. Oh, just FYI, Lisa's kids are in the background. So you're going to hear them in the background, and this
Yeah,
is what the pandemic is all about, right? Yeah.
yeah.
Bless them. Bless them.
So if they I lock the door, but if they
Pound on it. Yeah.
start talking about something else, yeah.
Inshallah.
Start talking about
Go
business.
ahead.
Okay, what was it? How do they? Well, I think you can understand. I think over time you can understand someone's sincerity. But here's what I always say: the truth always comes out. People can only hide who they are for so long. So
Yeah.
that's why I say, like, don't rush into things because eventually their character's going to come out.
And given time, it can. But unfortunately, we see this, and was one of the other questions here, is that before marriage, they were something. After marriage, and that's normal that people change after they get married, or they become more comfortable. They're in the zone where they've let down their guard. So it's also a time where you kind of adjust. There's a learning curve to get used to each other. That's one thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking about normal relationships here, but the abuse can come out after the marriage. That's another thing that we need to be aware of. That's the thing. You may not see this before. Yeah.
Yeah.
You may not see it. Yeah. Go ahead.
That's why I recommend to wait before, you know what I mean? You're not rushing into things. But yeah, some people do all of a sudden their true character comes out.
Yes.
It depends on at what level, right? So if it's normal marital problems where you're just arguing, no, I'm not advocating to up and leave your marriage. You know what I mean? But I'm talking about sincere abuse, put downs, emotional abuse. If that starts happening right away, I would actually nip it in the bud right away. I think people are afraid to take serious action on these things because if they took serious action from the get-go, it wouldn't spiral into these massive abusive relationships.
So the question, so with that question then, to get to a little bit more detail, somebody's asking here, when should a person leave a relationship? At what point? The first hit, the second, or the third? That was actually a question that was sent to us.
Okay.
So this goes in line with what you're saying. How would you answer this then?
My personal opinion is I think that a huge, massive stance has to be taken on the first hit. I would say actually pack up your bags. Where if you have the option, of course, not everybody has that luxury. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that's why I'm sure we'll get into it, but like, why don't they just leave? Question have that everyone likes to ask. But if you have the opportunity, I would actually take a huge stance right then and there, pack up and leave and go to your parents' house and not necessarily divorce right away, because I do recommend that time period for that other person to get help, and allow them that time period. But I think if we don't take a massive stance right when that happens, I'm telling you from the bottom of my heart, it only gets worse. Because people always say, why don't they just leave? It's not like someone just up and hits you on the first day, right? It starts bit by bit, slowly, and then they emotionally break you down, and then they start physically abusing you, typically. And so you're already broken. And so it's something small, right? They're super sorry. They're going to make it up to you. And then the next time, it's worse. And that's how it happens. And that's how women get trapped into it.
And like you were saying, there's a process to that. They first isolate you from people around you, whether it's friends, work, contacts, family, right? So there's a form of isolation, and it's not linear. Everybody's different, but there's this part of the process, slow process till they damage your self-worth, like a sister mentioned here. Salam sister from London, I recognize the sister. And so that's part of it, the isolation. And then part of the isolation within that time is the breaking down. What does that mean, breaking down? It means making fun of you, damaging your self-worth, making you feel worthless. Then you start trying to please them, try to get their approval. Bit by bit, it goes up, it goes up, it goes up. As you try to do that, you notice you start giving more and more of yourself to please them, to try and make them not angry with you, to get their approval. And they keep asking more and more of you to give. So you give up a lot more during that process, right? So then what happens afterwards is that they start really taking control. Then you start noticing bit by bit that your worth is dependent upon them. This is how your self-esteem breaks down. So this is pretty common.
Make you feel like you're not capable of living without them. So
right.
Like, I felt like I could not be alone when I was with him. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because I felt like I would not survive financially. I would not survive emotionally or mentally. And that's what they want you to feel. They want you to feel like you cannot live without them. And so even after a case of like him abusing me, I would go in and apologize for whatever caused him to abuse me, you know? And so,
That's very twisted. That's very twisted. Yeah.
and, they completely brainwash you into thinking
Right.
that you're nobody. You know what I mean?
And that it's your fault, because then they project their illness, their personality disorder, their abuse. They then project it onto you, or gaslight, meaning they, whatever they've done, they make you feel like you're the one who's at fault, that you're crazy, there's something wrong with you. That's right. You caused them. It's your fault, basically. And so when it's your fault, what do you have to do? You have to constantly try to make up for it. Right. And it's a sad cycle, but it's a cycle that even the most intelligent, educated,
Nothing to do with
smart woman
comes to you and they're like, you're such a strong woman. You know what
yes. How could they take advantage of you?
that, you know?
Absolutely.
So
And it's not, because it's a process, especially when you potentially love this person or have given your heart to this person. There's a trust there. There's a vulnerability. There's a family, right? There's a family that you, whether there's already children in the relationship or you're planning on having a children. There's also women who are divorced and remarried. There's their reputation, of course. So all of this is going to happen again. I'm worried about that. So so many different factors, right? And you hear that, like what you said, Lisa, is that, oh, you're such a smart, strong woman. How could this happen to you? And we hear this often with people, women who are stuck in these types of relationships. And it has nothing to do with the fact that they're educated or intelligent or anything of that, or strong.
right.
Because it's a process that they break you down, weather your soul down. And then within our communities, there's even more, like we said, the pressures involved here. When you do go to a Molana, we do go to elder in the community, it's pushed back onto you to be patient. To you have to, I've heard this actually from people in the community who are in high positions, say to women who've been in these situations, you have to make him fall in love with you. You have to be patient and just be smart about how to make him love you. Really, the person is abusing her, taking advantage of her.
Not
Whether
the
it's,
fact
you
that,
know,
like that she's being abused. That's
no,
never the issue. The issue
no,
is, how are you not fixing this? How are you not fixing his problem? So
right.
and we're so, it's such a misogynistic like way of approaching things that it's your fault. You have to fix it and learn to fix it. Learn to
Yeah,
leave, you know?
right.
So yeah, it's I've unfortunately, you know, like when I went public with it, I've received message. I probably received over 1,000 messages.
MashaAllah.
Like, well, unfortunately, right?
Unfortunately, but you also inspired a lot of women. That's what I was saying about MashaAllah. Yeah.
Because that's why, you know, like that's why I did it. But I've heard stories after story after story, and it's not just the sheikhs or the Milanos that are putting this out there. It can be their own family members.
Absolutely.
Them into staying into the marriage, and that's the most like disheartening thing for me. That if it were my daughter or my sister, like there should be no excuse for it, zero, and
Yeah.
no tolerance. We should have no tolerance for this. But yet they guilt them into thinking that they have to fix this, and it's so disheartening when women are being told that it's their fault, or why did you do this, you know, whatever the case is, they're being blamed for his abuse. And again, we
the
have
woman
to,
is, yeah.
it's not just about violence against women. It does go both ways. So
Yeah, and it could be a little bit different with men. It could be more financial, perhaps, or mental abuse, in terms of constantly putting down the man's worth. Nobody's gonna respects you. Nobody will. I'm the only one who's gonna love you, and things like that, or just taking advantage of his financial state as well. Things like that. So it does happen. Yeah, yeah, of course it does. I've heard men speak about this and how ashamed they feel. They don't feel like a man in front of their friends and family, so to speak.
From men, yeah, I get messages from men all the time. Actually, like, you know, I believe I, you know, am in an abusive relationship, but I can't speak out about it, right? So it's unfortunate because I'm against domestic abuse with the same amount of passion towards the man as it is towards the woman. Like,
Absolutely.
there is zero excuse for it, and that's how we need to be.
Absolutely. I'm same thing with you, especially on frontline working with clients and working on cases with in the community. Absolutely. But we don't hear much about it from the men's side. So that's why we keep bringing it up, because we want to normalize that it is happening. It is an unfortunate thing, but it is happening to both. So some comments and questions here are coming. Something to really distinguish importantly here. Of course, there's no place in our Islamic faith that says that this is allowed. This is a cultural norm that is abnormal. That shouldn't be happening. Also, somebody mentioned it's one thing for the average person to say this, but what about when imams are giving this advice to the community members? And again, we hear this again and again. Inshallah, to say be patient, and for the abused person to fix it. Like, we're hearing this from people in positions of leadership. So again, this is something that narrative needs to change, where the people in positions of power, whether they are the chefs or the scholars or the family members,
take more of a stance on it.
Exactly.
Not other way around. Like, some people are saying, oh, they don't want the sin on them for the divorce.
I come back and say, so do you want the sin of you going to being oppressed?
Right. Like, literally killed, though. Like, you want the blood on your hands for that, to telling her to go back into that. And we are talking about life and death. This
Absolutely.
is just a case of, like, yes, of course, hitting is serious, but women get killed. Like,
absolutely. Just last week in Dearborn, there was a case of a woman who was divorced from her partner. I sent it to you, and it was sent to me by a sheikh, by the way, who's very passionate about these issues, and I work with him very closely. And this was a case of domestic violence, murder, really. But she was divorced from him, yet he still got to her after. And we have these cases where women leave, okay, and feel forced to go back, whether it's societal pressures, family pressures, or even from the scholars. And number one, financial, because they cannot make it on their own. There's no support, and they're shamed. This woman, a few years ago, a Somali mother of 4 children, came back home, and he killed her and the children. Allahu Akbar. So you have these cases like that do happen, and which is why when a woman leaves, there has to be support from the community.
Where she's in most danger is when she tries to leave.
When she first to leave, yes.
And that's another reason why women don't go, because that's when they are most in danger. I promise you, the majority of the trauma that I have experienced was post-divorce.
Oh,
and I have not talked about it that often. I have been threatened like you would not believe. Like, I have, like, he tried to put credit card fraud on me, that I stole his credit card to try to get me in jail. Anything you can possibly imagine, like
shaming, yeah,
everything.
Yeah,
like the amount of trauma that I went through post divorce and when I was, in the process of leaving was probably the most. I to this day, and I'm being very open and honest about it, I know to this day I still have anxiety. You know what I mean? I'm like, there's always a little.
It's very common.
Right.
It's all common anxiety when you leave. Is he coming after me? Where is he? Is he going to show up? Is he constantly texting, messaging? What does he want?
And subhanAllah, by the grace of Allah, I'm almost afraid to say this because I want everyone to say MashaAllah. For the first time in years, like, he's been like a human being to me. And I don't know what happened. Like, but it took years. And I want to be careful on saying that too, because I don't want people to be in a abusive relationship, but like, oh, they can change. He would not have changed if I had stayed.
Right.
So
if you're not taking the steps, the measures that you do that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But it took years, and that's when the most trauma happens, or physical violence or threatenings happen, is when they're trying to. And that's another reason.
Sorry, what was that? That's another reason.
I was saying that's half the reason why people don't go, because
that's
when they're most in danger.
Yeah. And especially I find with the finances, they feel like, how am I going to support my family and kids? And that's where shelters come in. This is where the community comes in. This is where family comes in to try and support, to prevent these kind of cases from getting too far. Now, one of the resources I have here that I got at a violence conference a few years ago, it's called Violence. I'll show it first here. It's called Violence Against Women.
I don't think I can see it on the Zoom, but you can put
it on.
Okay, there you go.
So I'm just going to go like this so you can see it.
Words
On Instagram, it's backwards, I know. So I'm going to read it. It's called Violence Against Women. It's by the Canadian Council of Muslim Women, and it's Health and Justice for Canadian Muslim Women. And so this is details. It's got Islamic references here on also in terms of how to deal with the different topics around this, and especially for Muslim women. And there's also a resource for the imams and scholars as well, because there is mental health training as well as this type of training that has been going on the last few years. So it's quite heartening to see this kind of support come out and awareness in the community about this topic, alhamdulillah. And you and I are not scholars, but we've had to deal with our fair share of scholars around this topic, whether being in a case like you or being on cases as a therapist. And somebody pointed out here, I'm just going to read what they mentioned. They said that I just like to point out that Islamic scholars don't have the jurisdiction to divorce the partner from her spouse. So it's not always that they don't want to get involved. So the brother wrote down here, I would just like to point out that Islamic scholars don't have the jurisdiction to divorce the partner from her spouse. So it's not always that they don't want to get involved. So it truly depends. It's a case by case. Some scholars do have the jurisdiction to do that, to give the divorce. It's a whole other world.
That actually, like, I know I'm kind of gearing off from that, but that's a whole other topic in itself. We take these sheikhs and they have so much knowledge
and power.
Yeah, but knowledge and hadith in Quran. They're not a mental health therapist. They're not a doctor. They're not,
unless they've gotten that training. Yes.
Even a marriage counselor. So why do we go to them for every single problem in our life and we expect them to come with this knowledge, right? I think that that's something that we kind of have to recognize, that we go to sheikhs for everything, but they're not experts in everything. They're experts in Islam. And, that's what we need to remember, what they are educated on. You're a mental health therapist. I'm not. You're going to know way more in this field than I am. I should go to you for these questions, not a sheikh. So I think that that's something we need to recognize when we're trying to get help and advice on an abusive marriage.
And there are a lot of chefs who do offer that, though. They do offer marriage counseling support.
There are some that are trained, for sure.
Yes, and they come. They're involved in the mediation, but they're also involved in, and I've spoken to so many who say divorce is their least favorite, obviously. But family conflict is their least favorite because there is so much. He said, one sheikh told me, very powerful statement. There's his side, there's her side, and then there's the side of the truth. And it's such a messy,
I love that statement, except for when it comes to abuse.
Yes. Abuse is abuse.
Yes. Then I feel like we say, no, I'm sorry. There is no other side to the story. So that's what I like to always say. I'm like, there is no excuse. I don't care what caused it. There's no excuse for it. If anything can get you that angry, then you do have a problem. You have a problem. Don't project it on your partner. If I, God forbid, hit somebody, right? I don't care what you do to me. I can control myself and my actions, and I should be able to restrain myself to then physically hurt somebody. There's no excuse for it. So, unless you are being attacked yourself. Right. Unless you're self-defense, that's different. Yeah. Yeah. And you're attacked, and that could be in a different way as well. I mean, you may not be physically attacked. The person could be provoking or like threatening stance. It could be that they are saying things that are very damaging and hurtful or threatening. Sometimes people respond that way too, right? So, and back to what you were mentioning, is a little bit off topic, but just to wrap up that thought, although our sheikhs and scholars are vastly educated in that aspect, they do have other skill sets as well. And this comes into play into this topic as well, because they're actively involved in this as well as family mediators to help resolve the conflict. But it's important to know who you go to, who have the right skills for this and trained in this, because it's one thing to have knowledge, it's another to apply it in order to help. And alhamdulillah, I find that a lot of the chefs that I work with on these cases, they do have that.
and they actively go and get training in that, and they're working so hard to bring families back together, but also take that stance and say, no, call the police, no, do walk away, no, this is not acceptable. So we do hear that narrative as well, alhamdulillah.
There's this really good organization that I think I should highlight, is called Peaceful Families Project. I'm not sure if you've heard of them.
Peaceful
They
Families
have started
Project,
an
yeah.
initiative. They're located in DC, to train imams on how to handle domestic violence cases. And I actually think it should be like mandatory, because at the end of the day, yes, they're not necessary. Some are marriage therapists, some are actually trained in it, but a lot aren't, but everybody does go to the sheikh. That's the first person that they go
They're
to.
the frontline workers, bless them.
Right.
And they have, some of them say, hey, there's only so much I can help you in terms of calming your nerves, reading dua and Quran, but you need to go see a mental health professional. They outright say that sometimes. Yeah.
And that's good, because they're directing them to the right, resource. But
Exactly.
a lot legitimately don't know how to handle it. And so there's an organization that are training imams on how to handle being on the front line. So
yeah,
I think that's something that
these folks also do that too. These people also do that too. And inshallah, and a lot of other Muslim social health, social services are using that same language, because they see how vital it is and how important it is, and important to work together, the professionals, the different professionals in the community. Yeah. So we just have a live question here that popped up. Excuse me, that says, yes, I'm still coughing. It's been a month and I'm still coughing. Alhamdulillah. So the question says, how does a woman build herself up again and find her voice to speak up for herself? Lisa, love to hear how you were able to do that.
like we talk about Verona, right, as part of like a success story type of a thing, but really it was kind of a therapeutic job for me, because in the marriage, like everything was taken from me. My financials, like my life was sucked out of me, right? I felt like I had nothing left in me. And so I found a positive outlet that was something of my own, and that I could build. And I was in the process, my intention was to give back to the community, right? To make modest fashion more accessible for women. So I found that's one thing that I can recommend, is finding a very positive outlet.
Yes.
It's something of your own, whether it's building a business, trying to achieve a goal that you've like had in the back of your mind, but never really, had the courage to move forward. So that's maybe one thing.
Something you're very passionate about, that brings meaning to you, that builds up your self-confidence again.
For you and you only. You know what I mean? Like that this is something that I'm passionate about and I love. So that's one. Number two, I think it's important to recognize that everybody heals differently.
Yes.
And on different terms and on different, for me, I'm a crier. Like if you ask a question that I might cry in the middle of this.
Bless you.
You know what I mean? So it's
you
like
release your emotions that way.
I do. But not everybody releases their emotions that way. And I think it's healthy to talk about, as hard as it is, I think it's healthy to talk about the trauma that you went through with somebody that you are close with, someone that you trust, someone that you feel it's in like a safe environment. So I think it's really good to talk about it and like try to release your feelings, because I think what we do when we're healing is we don't understand our emotions. We actually have to take the time to understand how we're feeling. You know what I mean? Like, why do yes, we know we went through this abuse, but we don't really understand the effects that happen from it, right?
Yes.
We don't understand that, like, I get scared at X, Y, and Z happening. Why is this? You know what I mean? Even if you're in a safe space and nothing's going to harm you, it's still the effects of the abuse, because it lasts for years. I'm sorry, I keep getting text messages. Trying to like tell them to go. So
it's all right.
So it's not, there is no roadmap to healing. You know what I mean? I wish I could give just a straight answer and say, here's what you do X, Y, and Z, but everybody is different. And then of course, like I when my iman increased tenfold during my time of like, of hardship. You know, a lot of times, you know,
Yes.
I always got this question as a convert, like, I'm surprised you didn't leave Islam. And I'm like, well, I didn't convert for him. That's first and foremost. But
Alhamdulillah. That's why, Lisa. That's why. Yeah. You had your own reason for converting, but a lot of women, and I've seen this, have left the faith, taken off their hijab, and committing haram according to Islamic standards because of these situations, because of the abuse,
yeah,
but also because of the people who are in the position of power who are not granting them the divorce, or basically showing a really bad side of Islam to them.
then they
And so
blame their
they've left
religion,
because of that.
the people around it.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
That's very unfortunate. And
I went through
alhamdulillah to see that that wasn't the
that.
case there.
It was the opposite. It was when I would
Alhamdulillah.
just cry my eyes out, and I'm almost like tearing up.
Bless you.
Cry to
Bless
Allah,
you.
like, help me, you know? And that's when you like really can connect with God, is when you are at your deepest moments. And I'm so thankful. And for me, it's almost therapeutic to help other women, you know?
Yes,
And
of
say,
course.
I went through this, I got through it, you can too, you know?
Yes. And it's so validating when another woman or another human being, and you've gone through something similar, when you hear it from them and say, I feel you, I understand you.
Yeah.
That's so validating and empowering.
Like it creates the strength of one another, that, you know, that it's like we're stronger than we think we are, you know? And
Absolutely. And God does not give you more than
like,
what you cannot handle.
and I'm
Yeah.
telling you, subhanAllah, there is ease afterwards. You know, so I try to, like, I talk to so many victims that are currently in the situation. I'm like, you will get through it. You will get through it. And like, there's light at the end of the tunnel, you know? And it's so hard to see when you're in the midst of it, because you have like the world against you. You might not have your family supporting you. You have your, you know, the community is not necessarily supporting you, and you have this monster attacking you and threatening you and everything. You feel alone, and that is when you find Allah, you know? Yeah.
Bless you. Bless you. It
I
is
told
truly
them
in
a
those
prayer.
moments. That's okay. I think you're absolutely normalizing that it's okay to feel these emotions. It's normal to express these emotions. And it's important that other people see and feel this to understand. And you probably have men and women on the other side that we cannot see who are feeling this and probably are crying too, because they may be experiencing it, or they know somebody, or your story has touched them.
And subhanallah, I literally know of like cases every almost day and almost week, you know, that are going on. And it's like, there's so many people going through it. It's so like, I wish I could just go in and help them all, but I can't. You know what I mean? It's just such an issue in our community and other communities, and it's just, I think people don't realize how much it actually happens.
And that's the sad part. That's it is, and it's even more so within our communities, the Islamic community, given the fact that we have, and somebody mentioned here, that women have so many rights, and that they're violated, and that they're disrespected, and that they're not valued. And Islam came to liberate this kind of jahal and ignorance, and lift the woman up,
Practicing,
giving her these rights.
yeah.
And what's ironic is, and we know this, is that men, and yes, I'm talking specifically about men right now, but it can happen to women as well, who are on these positions on the pulpit, who are speaking about domestic violence and abuse and how to treat your families, are themselves hurting their families at home. And I've seen this firsthand, unfortunately. And it's sad to see that. And alhamdulillah, on the flip side, we have so many people who are in these positions who are advocates and are against people who are doing that, and trying so hard to educate and teach the people that, no, you cannot do this, or you have to stop this, and being proactive in terms of helping those people who are. Another comment here that we have here is looking for views on, does joking with a spouse and indirectly taunting and degrading contribute, or spouse taking jokes into negative perspective, does this contribute to hatred against the opposite? I'm interpreting this, what the relationship is like if you're both at the level where you're not disrespecting each other with these jokes, that's okay. That's healthy to have banter and joking and, you know, things like that between partners.
I'm somebody that, I'm like, my personality, I'm super sarcastic. Like, I'm as savage as they come. You know what I mean? depends on if there's truth behind it. Let's say that someone's sensitive about a topic. You know what I mean? But if you know that there's someone that they don't receive things like that and they enjoy the banter, as you said, I think then no. If you're doing it in a way that you know it's going to hurt them and it's going to be a little jab, I think that that's not okay.
No, it's not, because that can lead to a buildup of resentment and anger, and that can come out in a very an unregulated emotional way. Sorry. I think I need to take another one of these. I've got like a whole bag right now. Alhamdulillah. Yeah, it's just a constant whenever I start talking. I haven't gotten tested. I'm being very careful not to be, of course, around people. I am working from home. I'm doing all the measures I need to. No, I mean, I am going out grocery shopping, but my grocery shopping these days is like this, like
I've decided I might go niqabi.
I've actually felt safer these days going out like that. Like when I walk into the store and I see people all masked up and I'm not, I'm like, wow, the norm has flipped now. I don't feel safe. Whereas we were covered before going out, we felt unsafe. But now this is the norm where you feel safer going out to the stores like that. SubhanAllah. So I'm just going through here, mashallah, so many questions and comments and people commending you, Lisa, for coming out and speaking about what you've been through, and so much power to you, and beautiful comments and so much love. And they're telling you, please don't cry. Oh, bless you.
But I also cry I cry at commercials. I also cry. I'm a crier. I just am.
A beautiful reminder here, when life pushes you to your knees, you're in a perfect position to pray. And I think that's exactly what you described right there. I also want to point out, Lisa, when you mentioned that ease comes after a situation, the Quran reminds us, Inna ma'al usri yusra. Verily, even in that difficulty, there is ease. This ease could come out in the form of people checking up on you, your friends and family, or other people, or it's always in difficulty. SubhanAllah, He sends us something that helps us with these challenges. This can help you with your hope. This can help you if you are feeling that despair, or feeling very depressed about your situation, or feeling there's no way out. Please do remember there is. And we're going to talk a little bit later about what to do if you are in these situations, especially during the pandemic, where we see that calls and call centers have gone up, but now there's also in some places where the calls have dropped. And the idea is because you are around, you are stuck and isolated with your abuser, so people cannot reach out by phone. But, excuse me. I got my Vicks, hold on. Oh, that helps. Eucalyptus, mashallah, aromatherapy helps quite a bit. So there's also, I forgot the word right now, but instead of calling, there's also now different ways of reaching out for help. So if you're on a video call, and this is something that we have here from, let me just find it here, from the Canadian, it's called the Canadian Women's Foundation. And so they have been recommending that if you are on a call with somebody, how to signal for help. And the idea is to put up your palm like this, or rather your thumb like this, and make this sign. So you can do it indirectly, even if the person's around you, signal for help. So like this. And so the person on the other end who sees this, what they can do is you can call and ask, so that they can answer with a yes or no in case that person is around them. So this may reduce the risk of somebody listening. So you can ask questions like, would you like me to call 911? Would you like me to call a shelter on your behalf? Should I look for some services that might help you and call you back? So see yes, no questions. You can use another form of communication. Now we see text messaging with secret code words that are going around of informing the abused partner.
Have been like, when I was in the one time I tried to reach out to the police, I did text 911 because I was locked in a bathroom, away from him. But unfortunately, at that time, it didn't go through. But there are in the U.S. some cities that you can text 911. I don't know which one it is, so I can't talk about which cities do that. But they do have that in the U.S. where you can text. Not everywhere though.
Yeah. So just a reminder again. No, please, please. Lisa's from Orlando in the USA, and I'm from Ottawa, Canada. So we have viewers from all over the world. So you have to see what your local support services are offering. This is what I see here, what's happening within Canada. So they're having different form of communication and code messages, whether it's through text, social media, WhatsApp, or email. And you can ask general questions. So some questions that you could ask that, and this again could reduce the risk of somebody is watching the other person's device or account. So you could ask questions: how are you doing? How can I help you out? Get in touch with me when you can. So things like that. Other questions you can ask is, do you want me to reach out to you regularly? How else can I support you? So this is really important for the other person. If you do see somebody who's doing this, right, to reach out this way. And you can easily find some more resources online in terms of how to reach out, how to get help, and whatnot. So just be aware that even though you are potentially stuck at home with your abuser, you don't necessarily have to stay there, feel stuck there because of the pandemic. The resources are still available. You just have to find what is available in your own city or where you are, inshallah. Okay.
I would also recommend having, if possible, having a point person, like, you know, like you said, where it's like, where you can create code words. So like if you can have someone that knows about your situation, and then you feel safe with them, create a code word for them as kind of like an emergency situation. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
that up, things like that can really help.
Yeah. So again, for those who are just joining in, we're talking today about domestic abuse as well, speaking out against it. Lisa, who is an advocate for, and I'm a therapist that have worked with a lot of clients with this and also have a background in this area. A lot of love coming in, Lisa. Du'as and prayers to you. And you got your back, Lisa. Yeah. Somebody mentioned.
I'm very blessed right now. Go ahead, sorry.
No, keep going. I want to hear this.
No, but please make the offer all the women that, you know, are still
that are stuck, especially now during the pandemic. Yeah. Somebody mentioned something, and something we could talk about. We need to learn to identify abuse, especially that which is not physical. And we talked about that earlier. So people are running mad at the hands of narcissists. So narcissists come out in the form of abuse. So personality disorders, whether it's narcissism or borderline personality disorder, these are the crazy makers, right? They make you feel that everything is your fault.
Right.
It is, you are the one who is crazy. You are the one who has the problem and the issue. And so they have a very, very manipulative way of turning it around to making it seem, again, that it's you. The narcissists are also full of themselves, lots of ego. The world revolves around them, but they make it in a way that it's you who is doing that as well. They also come off as very friendly. And in our case, religious, very charming.
Are super charming to the public.
That you wouldn't believe that they are like that. They also could show that they're quite religious and even do a lot of charity and act work, like you were mentioning, for your ex-partner. Yeah. And also trying to show that they are good people and they would never do anything like that. They're helping people in charity. They're giving money to the poor. They're so religious. They're so this and that.
The first one raising his hands at those fundraisers.
MashaAllah. Yeah.
So it's like to the public, they like to portray that they're one person. You know what I mean?
So it's very important to be aware of these. And so sometimes, like we said, you cannot know about these people because they show themselves as a great catch. And then when you marry them or you get closer to them, then their true colors slowly start showing out. Because why? It's a matter of control. They start seeing things in you that they want to try and dominate, whether it comes out in the form of jealousy. You're my woman. Nobody can see you this way, right? Don't interact with people this way, things like that. And bit by bit, they start taking control and putting themselves above you and expecting the whole world to revolve around them. Again, this is all part of control, right? Especially when it comes to money as well. So I'm just going through. So somebody asked, Lisa, why did he treat you like that? Is he struggling with something? Then maybe he can go. And that's what the sister mentioned earlier, that he had his own trauma, that unhealed, untreated trauma that came out in this, yeah.
It's kind of like trying to give a rational answer on an irrational situation, though. You know what I mean? It's like, it's all, the question is so why did he abuse you? And
they make it sound like it's your fault.
I'm certainly not going to call anybody out. Thank you for asking it, because I do welcome these questions. I think it's an opportunity to address them.
Yeah.
But they're essentially saying, what did you do for him to abuse you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What did you do?
The answer is nothing.
No.
So I
No.
could, and if you want to get technical, not that it's exclusive, if you know what I mean, but I could buy the wrong item at the store, or I have like my addiction to Starbucks is like my one thing for me that would set him off. You know what I mean? Like, so it could be anything and everything. And, but again, remember how we talked about, I don't know if we talked about the honeymoon cycle.
Yeah.
Not this vicious, evil man that goes around just punching walls in every day. You know what I mean? There's a lot of beauty to him. There's a lot of good about him. You know what I mean? Like, he will do some really amazing things and actually genuinely be there for, you know, to help. It's not like he's this monster that's, you know, every single minute he's screaming and punching walls and stuff. It's a cycle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So he'll go into his abusive stage, and then he'll go into remorseful, and then honeymoon stage is what happens. And that's kind of how you get sucked in, because it's not like it's 24/7 abuse.
But there are people, unfortunately, who have experienced that. They get that physical beating every day, or the verbal every day.
Yeah.
Now, somebody just mentioned something, you know, oh, there's also an excuse of, oh, they must have had a past trauma. Trauma is an excuse for abuse. Absolutely. But what we're doing here, somebody asked, why did he do that? Yes. Yeah. It's not an excuse. Yeah.
That's where it's stemming from and why it's being repeated. That's certainly not the validation for it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
For it. And I actually like that would, you know, pull in my heart so much, because whenever we would go to a therapist, because we went through 4 therapists and several counts and counselors, he would just start bawling his eyes out about all the trauma that he experienced. And so then I felt like it weighed on my heart. You know what I mean? I guess I do have a compassionate heart. And then I finally said to myself, he's a grown man. He's responsible for his own actions at this point. And so I had to make a decision to say enough is enough, regardless of what he went through, you know, as a child. Like, he has to be able to control his actions. And if he can't, he needs help separately away from me and the children. That was a decision I had to make.
And that's the thing. That's part of, again, what we were saying, especially when we're talking about BPD, the borderline personality disorder, or the narcissism, they will lift you up like you are their queen. Yeah. And then they will drag you down below their shoes. So it's very confusing for the person on the other hand who is experiencing this. Is, why is this person behaving this way? They say, I love you. I love you. They will show adoration to you and do these kind things. And then on the flip side,
it would be like out of nowhere, this massive gift. You know what I mean? Like, what is going on? But yeah, exactly like you said, they'll build you up like crazy and then break you down. So it really messes with you mentally.
It truly does. And then it puts doubt in you. This is why, also another reason why the other partner will stay, whether it's the man or the woman. Because let's say if it's a woman, then a woman, as the prophet says, when she hears I love you from her husband, it will never leave her heart. And so after the abuse and after she's hurt, when she hears that, and it's brought on with the charm, that will bring her back in with false hope that this is happening, right? So it is very sad and unfortunate that happens, but it's also part of the cycle to be aware of when these things do occur, right? So I'm just going to go to another question here, and Lisa, I'm just going to ask you to answer this while I'll be right back, please. So the question, you got this, just a quick question. 1 minute. Okay. 1 minute, you got this. So the question asks here, so it's very frustrating not to be able to help somebody who is asking for help, right? So what can I do? So we got cut off Instagram. I have to go back on again, the hour. So Lisa, if you can just get back on Instagram. Sorry for those who are watching here. We're just waiting. So Lisa, if you can just add me on, can just add on for the Instagram. Okay, just waiting for that. It's okay. Usually what happens is Instagram can only go for an hour for the live, and then it cuts off. So I'm just waiting for Lisa to get back in here.
It didn't go?
I don't see you. I don't see Lisa. There we go. All right, so Lisa has joined us right now. Assalamu alaikum. Yeah, that's okay. After an hour, it kicks you out.
Like, no, you're leaving me. I'm done.
La la, alhamdulillah. Okay, so somebody's asking here, is it better to cut off abusive family members of the one who never changes, or keep it cordial? So while you ask that, I'm going to grab the cat. I'll be right back.
Okay. Okay, so I think the first question was, okay, so I wanted to touch base on the question that she asked beforehand, so I don't know if I should wait for her. To cut off abusive family members. Oh, oh, you can hear me. Okay. Okay. So as far as the abusive family members, that's a really tough one
Because I actually do know quite a few people that are like at least emotionally abused by their family members, but Islam tells you to keep relations with your family. So then that's where it really becomes tricky.
I don't want to,
I don't want to speak incorrectly from an Islamic standpoint.
But my belief
is that when there is abuse, that actually trumps the other orders on us to keep ties. Because at the end of the day, Islam is there. We do have a religion that talks about justice, and I personally, I would not take the abuse. That's me personally and how I would handle it. So, are you coming back, or should I just get talking? Sorry, everybody.
And I will try to answer questions while, if you guys put the questions like in the chat, I'll answer them as she comes back. So sorry about the wait.
Also, for those questions, you can actually request a question in that we can put into the live as well. So,
yeah,
we found the cat.
Too advanced for my IT.
We have found the cat. He is right here.
Effort to get into the line.
Alhamdulillah, we're all good. Oh no, so because people can they can send the questions and I could just click on it here. Khair inshallah. Thank you so much, Lisa, for answering that. And we have our usual pet therapy in the house. Let's see how much of a good mood. Yeah, you have one more creature to take after. So he is a male and his name is Loaz. So let's see how long he'll last here today. So thanks for answering that last question in terms of family members. And a lot of people ask me this question in terms of how do we deal with people that we live with? Yeah, because you could still be living with a parent who's abusive or a sibling and it's hard to get away. And it depends what kind of abuse. Excuse me.
To be clear, domestic abuse does not necessarily mean from an intimate partner. It's one of the most common forms, abuse, but it can be from, to a child.
Yes.
From a parent, from anybody living within the home. So domestic, I actually wrote a post about this as far as like parents abusing the rights of, towards the children. Like, I am a mom, so no one can come and tell me like you're not a mother, you don't understand, right? But forget that children have rights upon us as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And the duty to respect the parent does not mean that you own your children. You know what I mean? And that
they're an amana, a trust from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah.
It is my job as a mother is to make sure that my children are on the right path. They're happy and healthy. And I literally, when I put them in bed at night, I tell them, I'm like, I want three things from you. I want you to always have a life of pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I want you to be happy and healthy. Because God forbid, if I leave this earth too early, they know those are the most important things for me, you know. And we use I see so much abuse of parents toward children where they want to just be a means of control for their children, and it's really sad, and it's a lot of emotional abuse and a lot of blackmailing and that's not okay, you know. So that is a form of abuse. It's emotionally abusive.
It is, and it becomes tricky within our faith because there is the obligation of respecting your parents. You cannot speak back to your parents.
My sister just joined in. No, she's like my sister.
Oh, mashallah.
I miss you.
Salam.
Sorry.
It's amazing having support. No, please.
She's been yelling at me how MIA I've been. I'm sorry, I'll call you. So sorry about that. Go ahead.
No worries, bless. So yeah, like we were saying, it becomes tricky within our faith because of the idea that you have to respect your elders. You cannot speak back to them, et cetera, right? So it becomes tricky to manage that. And we're not saying to be disrespectful. Absolutely. This is not within our faith to do that. There's a line, but it's also setting those boundaries, perhaps getting another adult involved to speak to them, but also telling them, hey, you know, you are infringing upon your rights. You are hurting me, but speaking respectfully to them, but perhaps engaging perhaps with the local imam or an elder that they would respect listening to. Yeah. Somebody's asking, how do you break the cycle if your parent was abusive and you now have kids? What are your thoughts on that, Lisa?
If your parent was abusive and you now have kids, I feel like two things can happen. That you either sorry, keep going. My phone keeps
all right
away. I do recommend therapy like right away. Why
okay.
I was so worried about. I was like, no, if I'm connected to the internet, people will still be able to text me.
It's okay. Just ignore it. It's okay. Just ignore them. Especially they're saying, especially in quarantine, especially if the kids are home all the time.
Yeah. I do recommend therapy, and especially if you have experienced trauma, I think now more than ever, you need to have therapy before you go into a marriage, because that's why even like premarital counseling is important, you know, therapy before to deal with your trauma so then you don't repeat the cycle. Because I think that when you have been abused as a child, I've noticed, in my opinion, two things can happen. They either become so anti-abuse and they want to give their spouse everything that they didn't have.
Yes.
Or they repeat the cycle. I feel like there's nothing in between. You know, so I feel like if you are on the spectrum of someone that has tendencies to repeat these behaviors, you really need to like work on yourself before you get into a marriage. I recognized I'm not someone that will repeat the behavior as far as like, now I'm talking about the relationship that I'm in versus going into another. I'm
yes.
certainly not someone that's going to repeat the abuse, right, to my next spouse, but I recognize that I had a lot of past trauma.
Yes.
That I didn't want to punish my new spouse.
And that's important.
That, you know, that my ex-husband did to me. You know what I mean? Because
yes.
that's really important, that we have to deal with our own trauma and learn to be happy on our own before we go into another relationship.
Bless you. That's so important, because your happiness is not reliant or dependent upon anybody else except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Absolutely. Yeah. And we grow up with that. We grow up with that dependency upon, oh, you're such a good boy, such a good girl. Oh, you're so smart because you got this grade. Oh, the way you dress. Oh, your skin color. Oh, your amount of faith, et cetera, your piety, what you show. Right. So the thing here is, especially when we come to relationships, who doesn't love being or hearing, I love you, you're beautiful, you're so handsome, you're so kind, you're so this and this and this and that, right? So all of these things, who doesn't? We're human. We're naturally inclined to want these positive things and hurt. And it of course, it makes you feel good. However, and this is something we do in therapy, is we need to distinguish, especially when it comes to self-esteem and confidence, especially as women, where we fall for this, right?
Of course we do.
Yeah, I mean, the Prophet himself, peace be upon him, and his family said that when you say I love you to your wife, it never leaves her heart. I'm paraphrasing here, but that's what we know of that, right? So this is something that can be taken advantage of in this. But in this case, when we're talking about building self-confidence and esteem, we have to recognize that no matter what they say or do, it has to come from within you and your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as a therapist, and having seen and been in cases like this, everything you said with that previous question with past trauma and getting into relationships, it is so vital to resolve and work through that. Now, mind you, that being said, it's not going to completely 100% go away. It's still going to be there.
Human, and then
absolutely
relationship. So I'm not saying that it's like, no, I just want to be single for the rest of my life, right?
No, that's
just like everybody else. But I realized that I have to find happiness like on my own, you know. And it took years to get here. So, and subhanallah, I don't think I would truly be here if I hadn't gone through the trauma.
And that's the thing. It's your journey. It's developed to who you are today. And this is the thing when we talk about difficult things that happen to good people. And from an Islamic spiritual perspective, we hear this, and I use this in therapy as well, is what are you going to get out of this? How is this going to shape you? How does this influence you? Rather than you saying, why me? And we hear this. When a calamity befalls us, we say, why me? Right. Rather than saying, what can I learn from this? What do I need to get out of this? How can this help me?
From the bottom of my heart, believe that I went through what I did to help other women. Like
subhanallah.
I truly, like from the depths of my soul, I believe that. Because it's like when I believe something, I scream it to the world, and I'm not afraid to preach it. And I feel like maybe that's why I went through what I did, you know? So yeah, it's like we have to learn to take our trauma and how can we move forward in life with it. It will always be a part of me. It will always be a part of other women and men that have gone through it.
Absolutely. From it. What do we learn? How do we grow? How can we work on our triggers, especially? And this is something also with your new partner that you can talk to and say, you know, this is what I've been through. This is what this type of word can trigger me. This impacts me, and I don't want to take this out on you. So I'm just telling you ahead of time how this works, like how I feel, how this impacts me. And if you have, inshallah, a loving, an open, a communicative, and this is important, have open communication, a supportive partner, right? Then they will help you in that journey. Yeah, being sensitive. Yeah. Yeah, subhanallah.
Not that there will, as far as me personally, you know, there will be certain triggers that I'm going to be more sensitive about it, you know, and I like to discuss that from the get-go.
Yes, it's important. And it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. It doesn't mean there's something lacking with you. It just, it makes you human. Absolutely. It makes you who you are today and what you have been through and how you can help others. And like you said, this really, for you, this has become a mission, a goal for you to help other women and help other people who have experienced this type of thing, right? So some people are also commenting different comments here. I'm just going to go back to the last few questions here.
That you told me might come up just came up. That's okay.
Did it now? Now I go back and see. What does it say? What was the question?
No, it's okay.
It's okay. You can tell me after. Yeah, that's all right. That's all right.
I'm okay at answering anything, but it's fine.
But we're going to stick to related topics here, right? All right. So let's see here. So we had lots of questions about family. I think we've answered those questions in terms of how to show respect and how to continue to. I got cut off for a second. So I was
from Canada, no less.
That's okay. That's all right. Oh, really? That wasn't me calling you. So the questions, a lot of questions people were asking about family, living with family, and how to be with family who are abusive. And I think we answered that question. Again, to summarize it, not to be emotionally engaged, setting boundaries. Yeah, go ahead.
I have to be very forthcoming that I may not be the best to give advice on this topic because I didn't experience it in that regard. Does that make sense? And I want to be very,
of course, yeah.
You know, I would rather just, instead of just answering a question, you know, because obviously culturally I grew up very differently.
Yes.
You know, and so my experience is going to be from a completely different lens. You know what I mean? Where
as a North American,
in our, you know, in my culture,
as an American, yeah, you stand up more, speak out more for yourself.
A little bit more accepted to speak your mind much more, you know what I mean? And so
yeah, and that's
it certainly happens, but you know.
It's important to keep that in mind also, depending what culture you are in, what kind of upbringing in your household. The key thing as Muslim is to go back to the basics of Islam, right? In terms of the behavior. And there's lots of books and resources out there and really great lectures in terms of learning, especially women who are not familiar with their rights, and also the men, what their rights are as well. And I find a lot of people go into relationships and marriage without understanding what their rights are, their Islamic rights.
Right.
So that's really important to study that, not for the sake, oh, he gave me a flower, oh, he told me he loved me, oh, he promised me ABC for this, this, and that. And
anybody can do that.
it's the commitment and sticking to it and being true and honorable men and women when it comes down to it, right? In the end, from what I've seen, all these different cases, and I can be very blunt and very open, and can I say it very freely, I really don't care who I offend in this, because we're speaking about a topic that we need to be authentic and genuine, is that these people are not God-fearing. They pretend to be God-fearing. They pretend to put on a face. They pretend to know their faith. They come back and tell you, oh, read about Fatima al-Zahra and how she was with Imam Ali. Oh, read about Sayyidah Khadija, how she was with the Prophet Muhammad. Oh, read about this and read about this person and this and that. When, buddy, are you Imam Ali? Like, who are you? Who are you to say that, right? So it's really interesting. And I find that across, as a therapist looking at it objectively, seeing it across the board, people are marrying for the wrong reasons. From an Islamic perspective, and you see this, they're not marrying together to complete the faith, as the ayah in the Quran says. It's not about that. They're not working towards God. And when you have that God consciousness and that awareness in your marriage, by Allah, you will not have these problems. However, when the person is egotistical, when they are narcissists, when they do not put fear of God in terms of the rights that they are hurting and taking over, that's it. End of story right there.
Recognize how serious oppression is in our religion. You know what I mean? The amount of like, I just think about it and I'm like, do you realize the punishment that you could get for laying a hand on your spouse?
They don't care, no.
Actually truly had the fear of Allah, like this would never happen. So,
and it comes down to that, from an Islamic, viewpoint. That's what it comes down to. For people who have different faith, I guess they'll have a different worldview on how to respond to that. But we're looking at it from our perspective. In the end, it truly does come down to that. And somebody mentioned something: you cannot raise your hand in du'as and use those same hands to abuse someone. And when we talk about it from absolutely, and I'll to put another twist on it, you cannot use these hands and do latam for Imam Hussain or Lady Zainab or Lady Fatima. And then go and hit your wife, especially when we talk about, let's say, Sayyidah Fatima, who herself experienced physical, not abuse from her partner, or Lady Zainab, who got hit by the people after Karbala, right? And subhanAllah, we talk about, you're a God-fearing Muslim, and you cry for these women and these people, yet you, those same hands, are abusing your children and your wife. It really boggles the mind when you do that. And this beautiful example, as this person posted here, you raise your hands in dua, and these same hands, you are hitting your child or your wife or your husband. Allahu Akbar. It truly does boggle the mind.
Sorry, my
It makes you
Go ahead.
no, you're good, Lisa. No worries. You're good. It just, I think
Diana.
we're almost finished.
No,
I was just reflecting.
If I go all of a sudden, that's why.
Inshallah. People are just saying other comments here about that, and I think it's a good place perhaps to kind of reflect and wrap up, and it does come down to that. Like we said, if you are a God-fearing, pious person, and you truly are marrying for the reasons that our faith has taught us in, then you're not going to fall into this type of behavior, right? And if you do, let's say,
we talk about this all the time, but just in case someone's joining in, but don't forget about emotional abuse. You know what I mean?
not just physical. No, and that's the thing.
You won't be hurting them here too.
It's not exactly, it's not just the physical that we're talking about. And so we needed to, let's just wrap up with that as well, is that abuse can be emotional, it could be mental, it could be behavioral, it could be financial, it could be sexual, right? So it doesn't necessarily mean just the physical. How you treat somebody, how you make them feel, right? You cannot bring them up and then drag them down. That's emotional and mental abuse. You cannot take their salary away, right? Things like that. You cannot force them to pay for things they don't want to, or take away money from them. That is financial. So we recommend people who are wanting to learn more about this. There's so much resources out there on intimate partner violence, on domestic abuse, on domestic violence abuse. There's so much out there that you can learn and read about. You can send us messages as well. And I have no doubt that we're going to be getting a lot more personal questions, because always after these shows, people send in lots of questions. So if you do have a therapy specific related question, do send it to me. I'll refer on. If it's about support or questions in regards to Lisa's personal situation, do not ask her therapeutic questions. You can refer those back to me, inshallah. So that being said, my dear sister, I am in awe of you as the day I met you and the day that we first spoke about this. Bless you, my dear sister, bless you. And, you know, when I first read about your story coming out, I immediately contacted you as a supporter, as somebody who was commending you for coming out, especially within the Muslim community, and normalizing that this happens, and what we need to do to stop it, to stop the cycle and break the cycle, because there's so many detrimental effects on the person who is being abused, but also the whole family, including the person who is causing the abuse.
Right.
It's so much damage onto him or her, whether it's in the community, whether it be they have a criminal record, whether they can work again, it can destroy their lives as well. We're not saying to completely cut this person out immediately, but if the first time this happens, whether it's the physical, whether it's the emotional, we have to have hard prevention and what's the word that I'm looking for? Intervention.
Seriously. And take it very
Yes.
seriously.
Take it very seriously. Stance. Ahsanti. Exactly. Right from the beginning. Not let it go because, oh, he didn't mean it. She didn't mean it. Oh, this, oh, we're this. He's sorry. Oh, he brought me some chocolates. Oh, he bought me a diamond. Oh, she did this and made my favorite meal or brought me these. No. There's a line right at the beginning that must be set.
Addressed at that moment, because I promise you from the bottom of my heart, it gets worse and it gets worse and it gets worse every single time.
Bless you, Lisa, for sharing your story. You're an inspiration to women and men.
Before we go,
please do.
Okay. So I think I mentioned to you very briefly when I was out on my jog that I am actually fundraising to help with Penny Appeal.
Yes, please do tell us more about that.
Victims of domestic violence. So I haven't really posted about it yet, so you guys are the first to know. It's being fundraised on launchgood.com. I don't know if we could, can you type it in and pin it or whatever? I don't know if you can do a website, probably not, right?
You can give me, yes, please give me the information after and I'll put it on Facebook.
Okay.
Yes.
It's launchgood.com/secondchance. And I'm doing it with Noha Hamid and Asia, who is a fashion blogger as well. I know we're wrapping up, but subhanAllah, she just came out with her story today.
Oh, bless her. Today?
Yes. And I had no idea that she had suffered from domestic violence, not from her experience, but from a child's perspective.
Oh, bless her.
Had taken her out and basically was able to give them,
no, don't worry, keep going, yeah.
To give them a new life. And my heart just sank when I heard about her, because we were in a meeting with Penny Appeal just discussing about the launch of the campaign, because we're going to be really actively pushing it out in Ramadan.
Inshallah.
And I had no idea that she had the story when we were pairing up it. And so it affects so many more people than we realize, and we meet so many people that we have no idea have faced this trauma. So, and I was working with this girl on this, and we just got paired up. It wasn't like she asked to join on this campaign for this particular reason. It ended up just coming like that, and she has experienced it from a different angle of a child. So it affects so many people. But yes, please donate. It's for shelters, helping women with counseling, resources, shelter.
Bless you.
Financial resources, everything that a woman needs to help her and her children get out. So it's launchgood.com/secondchance.
Bless you. Thank you so much for sharing that. And although we didn't get a chance to talk about it today, there's also the topic of rape culture that we need to address within our communities as well, where women are sexualized and disrespected, and this is normal. And you know, the way she dresses or the way she speaks or if she smiles, and this is something that I see how it impacts women from another point of view when it comes to abuse, right? So sexual abuse, and that's perhaps a topic that we can explore another time. It's a whole other world, and I know people have sent questions about that, but it's not something that we can address today. May I just ask, what movie are your kids watching in the background?
Did you hear that? I'm so sorry.
It's no, please don't. It's wonderful ambiance sounds.
I was actually kind of happy that the volume was like super loud, because then they won't hear you know what I mean?
What we're saying, of course.
My one son is super into, he calls it Bad Birds, but it's Angry Birds cartoon.
Sweet.
So that's one. The other one, I don't know. They're obsessed with Ryan, YouTube star. I don't know if you know of him.
I've heard of that. Yeah, of course. I've heard of these things.
Who knows?
And
they're like, yeah, it's always boy stuff, like,
and you
100% boys. They are like, you probably heard a wrestling match going on.
well, we heard that earlier, and bless them. You know, that's a testament though that they are healthy, they're thriving despite having see that.
They're very healthy.
Alhamdulillah. But having gone through that experience, Lisa, and you still how you shelter and protect them, and that's really important, that once you are out,
happy,
yeah, and how and protecting them and sheltering them and getting them.
Yeah.
Keep going.
No, it broke up for a second.
Oh, no, I was
the last part.
I was just saying, no, you're very thankful that they're not impacted.
Like,
Alhamdulillah.
There have been moments where like I will just break down crying out of like gratitude, because I have a home of peace. You know what I mean? And it's like, I just like, I'm trying to tear up, where it's just like, I don't hear screaming and, okay, see if he goes away. He's about to bang the door now. Where I have a home of peace, and it's just not like screaming and yelling.
Alhamdulillah. And that you have been able to achieve this. And this is why when people stay in these environments, they think they're breaking up a family. That
a healthy home. You know what I mean?
It's not healthy for the child to see the parents fighting.
It is way
and together.
And
of course. Okay, so we are wrapping up now. Yes, the time is finished. Thank you, my dear sister. Bless you. We're wrapping up, Lisa. So we're just wrapping up. So no apologies. So it's okay, Lisa. We can just finish up now. So thank you so much, my dear sister, for sharing your story. And this is what, you know, how it works in the pandemic is that we're multitasking. Salam alaikum.
Yes.
That we're multitasking. Bless them. And like we were saying, during the pandemic, we're multitasking, especially as single moms, as you can see there, working as well as giving your time to us to talk about this. If anybody else has any comments or questions, please don't hesitate to message us privately, and we'll do our best, inshallah, to support or refer you as much as we can. I also want to give a shout out to our digital, Bronze Digitals, sorry, Bronze Digitals for designing all the posters, and they came to me and offered to do this, which is wonderful how people come in these times to do great things. And also, I guess I was the tech person today, so inshallah it's all good. Where are they? Oh, mashallah. That's so beautiful to see. That is so beautiful to see. I think it's so important to see that as well. What are their names? Bless them.
Ilyas and Adam.
Ilyas and Adam.
I'm so shocked that I got through this whole thing without
Salam, guys. How are you? Bless their hearts.
I gave them everything they could possibly need. I put chips, oranges, food, like anything that they could possibly ask for, I put on the table for them.
Super mom. Bless you, Habibti. Bless you. Thank you so much. I want to wish you Ramadan. Please don't. No, this is the best way to end, to show after you leave such a situation that you have a happy, peaceful household. If any, this is so important to see. Thank you for sharing that with us. I also just wanted to send you Ramadan blessings ahead of time. May Allah accept all of your amal and beautiful Ramadan ahead of you, even though you are at home. Inshallah, you'll still have, inshallah, salam, inshallah, you'll have a beautiful Ramadan. And remember us in your du'as, inshallah. And for everybody else, if you have any ideas, inshallah, to have more discussion, perhaps we can have another discussion in depth with Lisa. If you have any other topics or ideas, please do send them in. And also, we do have more in the works, inshallah, with other discussions with different scholars and people of different backgrounds, inshallah. So we look forward to having that engagement again. People are loving this, Lisa. They're loving seeing the smiles. You need a break. God bless you.
This is my favorite part of the day.
Habibti. God bless you. Thank you so much, Lisa, for sharing your time, your story, your beautiful energy. Always in our du'as. We're here for you too if you need anything. Habibti. Habibti, thank you. It was an honor meeting you. I had such a wonderful time. I think we had, what, 2-3 hours in Orlando, but it felt like a lifetime we knew each other.
Yeah, I was right. And I was very weak at the moment because I was fasting. So it was definitely very.
I remember, and it was so hot. It was so hot, and I was eating in front of you. Bless you, Habibti.
All
Take
right.
care.
Take care.
Assalamu alaikum.
Bye.
And thank you very much to our viewers on YouTube as well as Facebook, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum. By the way, those people on YouTube who joined later, we had some tech difficulties. Inshallah, what's going to happen is I'll upload the whole thing, and then you'll get a chance to see it on YouTube afterwards, inshallah. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.